Hey, welcome back to the channel. Got some really cool knives here on the table. We're going to be talking about a specific pattern, and that pattern is the swell center balloon end pattern. And so these are characterized by both sides, the top and the bottom of the knife swelling in the middle, and then it cuts in, and then usually you have a bolster on the end, and it's kind of round and bulbous, and so they call it a balloon end. And there's a lot of variation in this pattern. We're going to talk about that. We're going to look at the different variations, and we're going to talk about the origins of the pattern and what exactly it is. And so if you'd like to see and hear more of that, go ahead and check out the video. So welcome back to the Fortified Castle. Hi to all my viewers. Thank you so much for sticking with the channel, checking it out, liking it, sharing it. I always enjoy your comments. Feel free to comment on the channel. Whether you agree with me or not, that's not really important to me. It's just important that you're able to share your thoughts. And so we're going to be talking about this awesome pattern today, the swell center balloon end pattern. And I want you to start out, I want you to just take a minute to look at these knives as I talk. And, look at each one, and you'll see that there's some differences in this pattern. And so we're going to be talking about that today, about the differences in it and what a center swell balloon pattern is and what it isn't. And I just want you to kind of take it all in at first so you can see there are differences, and then we'll talk about them. So the expert in this field, Levin, I would consider to be an expert, having looked at knives from across the world and looked at private collections and talking to collectors. He's got a pretty good feel for these patterns and these knives and where they came from. Levin doesn't really, he talks about these patterns in two different places in his book, but he doesn't really talk a whole lot about this pattern from a historical standpoint, where it came from. And so that leaves us to just kind of suppose that information. But I think this pattern actually goes back a long way, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The pattern, I would say, is basically a penknife pattern. But as you can see here also, we have larger knives. So this knife right here, the Case 83 pattern, and this knife right here is a Walden pattern, are 3.5 inches, as well as this George Westinghouse is 3.5 inches. This pattern up here, which is a very old pattern and company, Southington, is 3 5/8. So we definitely have some larger representatives of this pattern, but mostly I think this pattern was a small penknife type pattern, but you do see different variations. One thing you don't see on the table here is this is a Whittler, this is a Whittler, this is a Whittler. This is just a two-bladed opposite end knife right here. It's not a Whittler. But what's missing here is a jack version. And they did make jack versions of this pattern, and that would look like this, but it would have two blades on this end, or one blade. This, of course, is a Whittler from Case. You can see it right there. And that's the thing missing from here. The jack swell center balloon in pattern is very rare. So I don't have one in my collection. I've never seen one, but Bernard Levin says, they exist. So that's the rarest form of this pattern. So let's just look at the pattern and look at the characteristics of this pattern. I need to get a pointer. Okay. So usually, I think in its purest sense, this pattern is an equal end pattern. You can see it right here. Both sides are equal. And there's no serpentine or curve to this pattern. And in the middle here, it swells. And so on the top, which is the back of this, the knife is the spine, and it's the bottom, and this is the top. And so both the top, you have a swell here where the knife swells out, and on the bottom, it swells out. And then it plunges to the width of the bolster. This is kind of a perfect example because you can see it here. It's more narrow here and a little fatter here, and that's why they call them balloon end. And this is kind of a perfect example of it, but they don't all look like this. It's just kind of the ideal. You can see it really well in this imperial. It just looks like a balloon, and so that's why they call that pattern a balloon end. Now, a lot of variation in this will be sometimes the bolsters are half the size of this and just round. Sometimes you have a sharper point here. Sometimes you have a more drastic curve. And I think those ones that curve are more elegant. And this is a good example of that right here. You see this really nice drastic curve coming down here. And it just looks really elegant. But you have tip bolsters on here. And you can also, I do have a knife, I didn't bring it out for the video, but I do have one that does not have bolsters on it. So they were also bare heads and just bolsterless. They made this pattern in that type of knife too. This one, you have genuine ivory here, and it dates to the 1860s. So this pattern goes back a long way. I actually have one that dates prior to 1860 to around the 1840s, maybe even the 1820s. And so it's been around a long time, but I think it probably started out as a penknife pattern. And then like many patterns, it crossed over into other genres and got big like this. And it is an elegant pattern. So let's look at this case and the differences between this case. The bolsters look almost exactly alike. The curve is a little different. So the case is a little flatter here, and this Walden knife has a deeper curve right here. And so I think that's the way traditionally that manufacturers created some differences in their knives. You can see right there, they really look close, but they're also kind of different. Both of these are whittlers. It was a popular pattern for whittlers, as you can see there. Another variation that you see on this pattern is right here. Now this looks more like an equal end pattern. And most equal ends actually on the head side or the tail side of the knife where the main blade is. Most of the time the other one is slightly smaller. I haven't really measured this, but it kind of looks that way to me, that this is slightly smaller than this side right here. But normally we would just call this equal end. The other thing is there's not much of a swell here. If you look at that, it's very subdued. There's no point, but you can see it right there. You can see that it swells out. And so this is a really subtle swell center balloon end pattern right here. and more of a equine type of swell center knife than say, you know, this, which obviously you have a smaller bolster here and a larger one here. So this is just another kind of variation to the pattern. You see it right here. So this is the same thing. This is one of those picture knives in really good shape. This is a 4-bladed picture knife. Really cool. But you can see it is more of an equine than this type right here. But it's also not quite so much of a balloon end, although you can see it right here. So there's different variations within this pattern that creates a lot of different type of knives. Here's another old one. This is from an obscure Sheffield maker right here. It's bone. It took me a couple years to actually identify this knife, but I was finally able to get a positive identification on it. And you see it right there. Hancock and Sons is what H&S stands for. Just a beautiful variation of it, and unusual because this is kind of square. And so that's what you don't see in this pattern. Almost every one has a round end. And so this is a really different variation of it with squares, and you just don't see it. So like in the early 1900s, you don't see any that are squared off like this. And, you know, another example of just an artist, right? Cutler doing something different, trying to make his special and set it apart from other knives. But generally, they're all going to be round bolsters on these. I'll show you one. This is a new version right here. So you have a swell center balloon in pattern here, but it's square bolsters. And so if you look at these bolsters, yeah, it's round, but it has shoulders. And so this is actually a square bolster, and you can see the difference between a round and square bolster right there. So this is Rough Rider Reserve, and it's a very large knife. You can see compared to the other knives, it's pretty big. So even compared to the case, it's a pretty big knife. But that's where, you know, just modern knife makers are taking some different interpretations on old patterns. I think that's fine, by the way, and I think this is an awesome whittler. I still haven't used it, but I plan on using this to do some whittling. I think it'll do a great job whittling. But that's how you see some differences. This knife is not too old, but this 83 pattern is not in the regular lineup with case. They make it every couple years, maybe every 4 years they'll put some out. So it's fairly regular, but not in regular production, I'd say. And you don't see a lot of these back in antiquity either. So the only ones in the modern era, say post World War II, was the case. Camillus made a swell center balloon in what they call the carpenter's knife. It's a 3-bladed knife. It wasn't a Stockman. It wasn't a whittler, but it had 3 blades in it. I actually have one of those. I didn't set it out for the video, but maybe I can add that to it in the editing. And pretty much that was it. So by 1940, this pattern had largely gone the way of the dodo, and you just don't see it. There are some modern examples, like from Kay's, a few Camillus's, but for the most part, I think they were the only ones making this pattern. This is probably a post-80s knife right here, I would say. Westinghouse, really finely made knife, beautiful knife, in that traditional swell center balloon end pattern. Now, Levin, just calls this class of knife center swell knives. And so if you look, let's see, I don't have a good example here to show you. Think of the, like a Coke bottle is a swell center. A trapper has a centered swell on the top of it there by the blades. And so they kind of all fall into that one category. And then he divides these into jackknives, penknives. And if you look at this, it kind of looks like a sleeve board. See that? And then they just swelled out the center of the knife. And so maybe that's where it has its origins. It's just a more elegant sleeve board knife. I don't know. But it is one of my favorite patterns. I really think these are beautiful, beautiful knives. And one of the most elegant patterns for sure. So I'll close with just, looking at a few of these. Here's a really cool, good looking bone, jig bone one. This is a keen cutter, so it was made by Walden. And this is a penknife. See if I can get this thing open. I can't see it. Because it's on the other side. Duh. There you go. And that's what it looks like. You can see that swell more acutely, and it's very sharp on this one too. Sharp swell in the middle. Look at that long swedge on that pin blade. And it looks like a spade blade, so that's kind of unusual. It's that E.C. Simmons keen cutter. That's an Imperial. Fake pearl on that, but a pretty knife. This is an Elliott, imported from Germany. Dates around 1912. Elliott and Company. Really nice action on this. Really well made. This is the Southington. Very large knife. Traditional wood scales on it. Really good looking knife. 3 5/8. Hancock's and Son, Sheffield, Germany. 1860s. This is a Camilla sword brand. I'd say that's pre-1940. It's a penknife, just 2 blades. You can see the sword brand logo. This is, let's see, it's not a Canton cutlery, it's the other one. All 4 blades of these blades are marked. Good action on every blade. In really good shape for one of these. A lot of times these crack and are hard to see. This is a Stuart Taylor out of China. Really pretty black pearl here. Crown bolsters. You have worked backs on the blades and on the spine there. This is, hold on. It's Martin Brothers. Really cool. And what else we get? we showed this already. The George Westing home. It's a really pretty knife. Well made too. All right, so that is your center swell balloon and pattern in all its different variations and how they may appear. Kind of interesting. There's a lot of variation in this pattern. So thanks again for checking out the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.